Welcome to This Week in the PNFL. I'm your host, Mark Hill, and with me are my two great co-hosts, Mitch Grawl and Dean Chambers. How you doing today, guys?
Very good.
Fantastic.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So, we are down to the final game of the season. We had some real good championship games. We're going to go through that as well. We did reach out to the winning coaches, and what we had them do this season is submit some answers to some questions that we had. Each one of us asked a couple questions, and we're going to go through those as well, and we're going to discuss them, and then we're going to go ahead and go into our predictions for the final game of the season. Obviously, we have our lead pipe lock, so clearly we are going to everybody's going to have a pick. I think it's going to be kind of interesting. Spread's going to be I think it's a pretty decent spread, but we're going to get into all that as we roll through the show. So if you guys are ready, we are going to go ahead and kick this off with the AFC Championship. We had the New York Jets taking on the champion Los Angeles Chargers, and very close game, very thrilling game. But New York managed to just take the edge and take the victory, 31-28. We are going to start with Dean on this one.
Yeah, I had predicted the upset in this game, predicted that the Chargers would win. And I think early on in the game, the Jets had a little bit of an advantage, and the Chargers made a bit of a comeback. And I think I think when you looked at last week's game and the Chargers had a pretty aggressive defense, I think Thomas expected that. And he put in some screens and some passes that had more backfield pass protection, plays where maybe two or three receivers were checked by the quarterback. And a lot of that worked out well for him. And we did have a very close game. And, the weather is always an issue in this game, as many this season seem to have been, was played in the rain, which kind of equalizes things a bit. So, the Chargers played tough and they had their chances. They just fell short by 3 points. And, I think it was definitely a strong coaching effort by Steve, and I think he really did, put in the effort and really did very much want to go back to the Super Bowl again. But, as we've said this season, that the Jets are on a mission, and, they wanted to be there too. And only one team can represent the AFC, and by a field goal, it turns out to be the New York Jets.
All right. Mitch, what do you got over there?
Yeah, well, I know going into this, I, was expecting New York to win this game by quite a bit just based on the earlier season game where New York, dominated Los Angeles on the field, even though, the score is, I think, only been about a 10 or 11-point game. This is very similar, right? I mean, you look and, New York statistically dominated Los Angeles. The big key to me, though, was the return game. And a lot of times that in those rain or weather games, that becomes very unpredictable. And Los Angeles was able to average about 30 yards a kick return and allow them to have those short fields and make some, obviously, make a couple of big plays and be right there in scoring position. So, ended up being a much tighter game than I think we all expected. And, congratulations to New York for making it back to the championship.
All right. Second game that we had that we were entertained with was Chicago hosting San Francisco. And another good battle, another good close game. Um, I'm kind of curious what you guys um, are going to say about one particular statistics or one particular stat, I should say. Um, but Chicago managed to take this 29-27. Mitch, go ahead and start.
Well, I know that you're referencing the sack totals, and I mean that's for Chicago. That's pretty much par for the course. I mean, I think they led the league in sacks this season, and continue to lead sack the sack the quarterback in the playoffs. And it was only six sacks. It was six separate players with a sack in the game. So that's pretty cool on that standpoint. Outside of that, Sam Darnold had a strong game from the offensive side, but you put all that together, and again, you go, man, how in the world was this only a 2 point game, right? And I point back to the returns. You look at San Francisco, 29 over 29 yards a return in the kicking game. That's the big thing in these weather games that always kind of throws a wrench or a variable into predictions. Is that when those weather games come along, the special teams usually goes nuts. And in this case here, San Francisco was able to, similar to Los Angeles, get some short fields, had some big plays to Ruggs in the passing game to help that out. But we got Chicago back in the championship again, and a familiar Chicago versus New York Super Bowl. So should be fun.
All right, Dean, what do you have?
Yeah, there were six sacks by the Chicago defense, but I could tell in watching this game that Charlie anticipated that and scouting them, and he used some screen passes and some other measures because those six sacks could have easily been nine or more. Otherwise, if Charlie hadn't made some adjustments, I think that's also in addition to the returns, probably kept this game close. There was a lone turnover thrown, an interception thrown by Darnold, and one turnover can make a difference in a close game. But I think I expected Chicago to win more easily than this. The weather was certainly a factor. It was actually a game played in the snow, so it wasn't just rain like they played in New York. In Chicago, they played in the snow, and it was quite an interesting game and very close. And we can expect something quite interesting this weekend between these two winning teams, no doubt.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, my take on both of these games, I, as far as the Jets go, I knew what they were going to do. I mean, you could easily tell during the season how they were going to be on a roll. I will say that I figured the Chargers were going to put up a good fight. I knew that they won the championship last year, so they're not just going to roll over to anybody, especially the Jets. So, good battle, good game. You know, Obviously a field goal is what separated them. The rushing yards, uh, yeah, give the edge to the Jets on that side. The passing, same thing. You got 425 to 234, or excuse me, no, looking at it wrong. Total yards was 435, 425. So rushing, the passing was 320 to 171. So um, they definitely threw some things out there that LA probably wasn't expecting, but with those types of stats, you would figure. I mean, they practically doubled them in yards. You'd figure it would be a blowout, but they kept the game close. So I'd say that's probably more of the bend but don't break defense. So they kept it close throughout the whole way. It was just a field goal that was separating them. Chicago, San Francisco, another game that was close. Even though you had the six sacks, they were by different individuals, so you basically didn't know where they were coming from. But like you said, and I agree, Charlie had the screens out there, so it could have easily been a lot more sacks out there than what was showing on the scoreboard. The biggest thing I see is the rushing. Charlie only had 40 yards rushing. Frisco had 131. So Justin did what he was doing on the ground. So, but both of them I would say are entertaining games. I think if for the guys that watched it, it wasn't a blowout. It was very thrilling and entertaining to watch. So um, that's my take on it. Any final thoughts that you guys have? That all three of us spoke. Anything final you have before we move on?
Yeah, the games are definitely closer than the spreads would have indicated.
Yep, I agree.
No, I
Mitch.
think let's move on to the next segment.
All righty, all righty. So, um, with both teams or both coaches getting ready for their game, what we ended up doing this year is sending out some questions, and well, Dean sent three questions out for both coaches, same questions. I sent three of them out as well. Mitch being Mitch, always gotta be the lone wolf out there. He's so good in his journalistic skills. He only had to ask one question. That was his standards. Hey, I'm so good. I just get one. So, uh,
I didn't want to scare him with having to write a book. That's all.
okay, that's what he's telling you guys. I say something different. So what we are gonna do, and I think we're gonna do this. Get this right. I'm going to ask the question, and then Mitch is going to read the response that they gave Dean, and Dean's going to read the response that they gave Mitch, and I guess they're going to alternate my questions. I don't know. We'll fumble through this. So, um,
You
and
mean this is going to read Justin's answers and I'm reading Thomas's answers?
yeah, who's going to read?
Yeah, so you did not just say anything we talked about in the pre-show, Mark. But I think Dean and I will figure it out.
Yeah, you guys have figured it out. I thought,
Well,
well,
you're going to answer questions, and then Mitch will read Justin's answers. I read Thomas's answers. We'll have a brief discussion, then go
that's
to the next
fine.
question.
All right. So yeah, okay, that'll work. So they'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. So the first question, this was Dean's first question that he asked both of them, and his question was to both coaches: what is your advice in regard to being a coach and general manager of a team to the other 16 PNFL team owners who have not been frequent participants in a PNFL Super Bowl? So that,
Just for clarification, that means the 16 of us that are not playing this coming weekend.
yes, yes. So that was Dean's question to both coaches.
Well, who
So
do you want to hear from first, Mark? You want to hear from Justin or Thomas first?
let's hear from Thomas.
Yeah, Thomas's answer was my advice to coaches in this league would be to be patient. I joined and was good, not great. Had some average seasons and even a 2-win season. It takes time. I was consistently behind Rich in my division. He completely outclassed me for years until he retired. It takes time to figure out what allows you to win consistently. It took me 20 seasons before I won a Super Bowl.
Okay. And on the other side,
Well, Justin's response was, "Well, you guys are all just awful, and I don't know what y'all's problem is." I'm joking. No. Justin's answer, Jerry and Charlie have been there just as much as me so far. I'll recognize them for being great opponents and answer the question to the other 14 owners. We all like the draft, but recognize that in today's PNFL, success can be had by those who focus 90% on coaching and only 10% on being a GM. But a team that is a 90% GM focus and a 10% coaching will not have success. And I believe that. It's the weekly grind that gets the job done. Expect to develop a student, and you can hear the dog pound here behind me of my two new puppies, so I apologize for that. It's the weekly grind that gets the job done. Expect to have to develop a sustainable coaching process to win games. Gradually try and streamline or improve. I hear Rich is a good resource for those who need guidance with this. I can only think of one coach who had great success right out the gate in the past, and that was the Colts 2009 to 2011. It usually takes several seasons for a coach to put it all together and have repeat success. And sometimes good luck or bad luck can come into play along the way too. Look at the coaches and their careers. Parkerson, Murphy, Brenner. It took time for all of them. So I think Steve has shown us he's just about there these past few seasons. Mitch is close, and Dean is getting closer. Back
Okay.
to you, Mark.
All righty. So, um, the second question
Well,
that
were we gonna comment on each question before we go
yes,
to the next one?
yes, go ahead. Go ahead and comment on them.
Yeah, I think it's part of what Justin said. Definitely the part about focusing mostly on coaching than the GM side of things. I think is definitely true. I think we have a couple team owners that put a bit more focus on the GM side. They happen to like that. They may not win as many games as those, and I think we have a few that do the very minimal on the GM side, but focus heavily, might even be more than 90% on the coaching side, and they're generally successful. I think that's definitely true. I think a lot of what Thomas says is true, and I remember when I first joined the league, Thomas was um, he was having winning seasons, but he wasn't like one of the maybe top 2 to 4 coaches in the league. So he has definitely improved a lot. I mean, he was in Rich's division, and he was perennially the second place team in the AFC East because Rich either had Buffalo or Miami many of those years, so the Jets were in second. And he kind of took that over, and I don't think it was just simply due to the retirement of Rich. I mean, Rich could have gone on playing, but Thomas just got that much better. I think if he had been as good as he is now back when Rich was active, he could have challenged Rich in some of those seasons. So I think he's gotten quite a lot better, and I think he realized that, and I think his answer illustrates that as well.
All right, Mitch, what do you got? Mitch.
Having to move the dogs.
Uh,
No, I don't have anything else. I guess I think what both said are right on the money, and it does. It even I just speak for myself. Yeah, I feel like all right. You feel like you're kind of there, but then you feel like at the same time, man, alive. It's hard to sustain success out there. So to their points, it's not overnight, and you know, so this actually kind of it makes you feel good to realize that.
all right. So the second question, and we're going to go through. I think we can go through Dean's questions first, and then go through mine. And like I said, uh, Mitch being such a good journalist, he only had to ask one question. So Dean's second question to both of them is: how do you see the value of the points, some of the point system, and how to best use them as a resource in managing a team in the PNFL? So we will um, let's go with um, let's go with Thomas's answer first.
He says, points are important, and I choose never chase in free agency. I try to get as much value as possible for each point. I watch I watched other coaches successfully sign their stars long term and began doing that a few seasons ago. It is easy to sign players at one point that you should never even re-sign your own players unless they can't be replaced.
Okay. And Justin's answer was
Well, Justin, he says that, well, how many points do teams get per year? 50, 55? I guess you have to allocate that in a way that makes sense to you. The point system is not a perfect system, but it's had some good tweaks over the years, and it does an adequate job for a league that is designed to be more about coaching. I was in the league for seasons 2005 to 2012, and in retrospect, I felt frivolously, like I spent frivolously, multiple points on backup guard sorts of mistakes. Of course, there was no 0 point bidding in those days, and the drop off to the free agent pool was steeper than it is now. When I came back to the league in 2020, I vowed to myself that no matter what product I put on the field, I could win, quote unquote, the points battle by spending conservatively. Ironically, the first season I was back, I put a bid on an older D'Angelo Williams. And when Charlie outbid me, I went back and forth about whether to engage in a bidding war. Ultimately, I followed my plan, didn't spend the points, and then in the playoffs, Charlie's Niners knocked me out. D'Angelo Williams had a big game. So you have to live with your decision to spend or not to spend either way.
Okay. So, um, Dean, what do you think about that comment?
Yeah, I think a lot of what he makes sense about being more conservative and how you spend points. I think some teams probably spend more points re-signing players than they should. I think, from my point of view, some teams definitely overspend on getting into bidding wars on players in free agency, and probably pay too high a price for those players. Um, I think, judging from the answer, Thomas seems to have even a bit more conservative approach in general on how he manages points,
Mm-hmm.
and it's definitely worked well for him also.
All right, Mitch, what's your take on that answer?
Oh, man, I made some awful mistakes with overbidding or with my restructuring, going and signing. Just, I don't know, it just initially feeling like, oh, crap, I've got to have a roster and all this, and re-signing players to the 1 year, or the 2.5 point, contracts and all that stuff. And then, after a few years and paying attention to people, you kind of realize, why the heck am I spending money on players that I can go and pick up in the free agency pool that are basically the exact same player? And so one thing I would just say is, remember that these players are numbers and ratings. Don't get caught up in the name, or don't get caught up in, I guess, sentimental with these players, because at the end of the day, they're all basically the exact same rated numbers. So that's it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see how someone would get hung up on that name and be like, "Yeah, I know that name. It's a well-known commodity, but they don't look anything
Or
past that."
or they went to my favorite college, and I just want to keep them on the roster because they went to my favorite college.
Yeah, I could see people doing that. I can see that happening.
But if
So
they would be sixth halfback, because your other five on the roster are better, I don't know if it's worth spending any points on them.
yeah, so that right there makes good sense. So the last one of Dean's questions we have for both of them is, what do you believe are the best ideas for improving PNFL as a league going forward? So let's start with Justin's answer, Mitch.
All right. Well, Justin's response here was, there's some merit to the idea of giving the playmakers an extra couple of weeks for exclusive use of their plays, but I don't see how it can be implemented without a neutral play reviewer or a panel of play reviewers. I'm not saying Charlie would ever do anything nefarious, but currently the play approval process is that you send him your play submissions and he reviews for rule conformity once he has looked at that he can't unsee it. Um, I'd like us to seriously consider league expansion in the next 5 seasons. I know it's a big jump from 18 teams, but we have some demand right now, right? I think expansion, if done correctly, could have some synergy with increasing the spread of player ratings, like Mitch has been clamoring for. Thanks for the shout out there, Justin. I think he's got the right idea there. In 3 words, rating system adjustment. With an 18-team league, you can have a careful you have to be careful not to do it too fast. But if we expand, then it could be done virtually overnight with an expansion draft. You just have to make sure the parameters are fair for all. Even if we end up with some CPU teams at first, Rich and Jerry's formula for them have proven reasonably competitive. Yeah, yeah, some of us really know.
Yeah, headless
I know it
horseman,
would be
headless
a lot
horseman.
of work for Rich, though. I know it would be a lot of work for Rich, though. I think it could improve the league, but he would have to think it's worth it. So that's Justin's response.
Yeah, speaking
That's
of
a good answer.
CPU teams, we have 2 words to that. You all remember what those 2 words were?
Yeah, headless horseman.
Yeah, exactly. I'm actually a big advocate if it's possible and feasible, and I think the success of the CPU teams proves that it would be viable to expand the league, and it'd be nice to see several people from the past unretire and come back into the league and coach teams with us. I think it would strengthen the league overall, and I think it's a chance we could afford to take, even if we had like 4 or 5 or 6 CPU teams short term, because
Hmm.
the CPU teams are competitive. They're not like easy wins, as you could say.
Right.
And we got to the point where we had 25, 26, 27 of us actively coaching in, say, a 28 team league. I think it would strengthen the league overall. Um, as for the other point that he made about playmakers having extra time for exclusive use of their own plays, I can see arguments both for and against that. I'm not sure if the amount of work it would take for Charlie and Rich to implement that would be worth it. And I'm going to say something that will probably surprise you folks. As of right now, I do not have a single new play created and ready for this coming season. I've been focusing on other areas, mainly on re-examining my whole game planning process and trying to make that more effective for this coming season.
Dean, we are not losing sleep on you putting plays together before the season starts. Don't you worry. All right.
But I thought you might be
Wow.
surprised by that. I think you might be surprised.
I am not worried that you will have
You
a
might be
completely new set of custom plays before the season starts.
Yeah, I thought you would have been expecting me to say, "Yeah, I have 30 offensive plays for next season."
Oh
Creative.
no, oh no! I'm sure you will have that and more ready to go before the season starts.
There you go. I think Mitch is worried about that one Seattle play that was razzing on me about.
No, I'm practicing special teams, working on special teams.
All right. So, what was Thomas's answer to this question, Dean?
He said, "I think the PNFL is in a great place. Rich plays all the games and posts on YouTube. You guys do the podcast each week. There's a very good debate on the forum about topics. I'm not sure what else could be we could do to improve this decades-old game." I think he makes a good point in the about improving the game itself. You know, we're limited by the fact that we're using Football Pro 98, so there's only so much can be improved in that. And I think some of the things that Justin talked about could be some areas that we could look at. League expansion is one, and we can always. Although I think anything we re-examine or think about changing, as someone posted on the forum, should be based on some good testing and some solid data, and we don't just take chances on, oh, maybe we should change these ratings or change that, or put in a rule or remove rules that would, like play design rules. Let's have some new rules, or let's get rid of some rules, or even in things like free agency and points. I posted last night that this whole controversy over people cutting some of these quote more marginal players and re-signing them, and what I posted last night, there's not a problem there. There's nothing needing to be solved. That those players are only worth 1 point because that's all they're only worth. Because otherwise, if someone cuts a play and resigns them, if someone else thought that player is valuable, they'd bid 1.5 on them. And that doesn't happen. So we don't need a new rule that says you can't cut and resign your players, in my opinion. Because there isn't a problem there. No problem means don't need a solution. What do you all think?
I agree. Now let me ask this one question though, because I know you were talking about possible expansion. We're at 18 right now, so and I know the game, if you expand it, it doesn't it jump from 18 to 2014?
28.
Oh,
28, yeah.
28. The
So if we had,
pre-Carolina Jacksonville merger.
right, so if we,
expansion.
I don't know how many people are actually interested in joining, but let's say we had 3 or 4 and we expanded and no one leaves the league, we could be at like 22 out of 28. We have 6 headless horsemen out there on the loose.
Okay, so it has to jump. It will automatically jump to
one
that.
in each division. Put one in each division.
Okay.
Because you'd have 6 divisions. You'd have the old, AFC, the East, Central, and West. So
Right.
you could
Right.
put a headless horseman in each division.
Okay.
That's correct.
And then the
And
next level up is your 32 teams.
No, I think it would be 30. I think
30 is the max. Yeah, this game doesn't support the 32 league format. Someone have to write some.
it only goes to 30 because of the Carolina Jacksonville expansion.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
I mean, I would love to see it, but also know if we didn't have a lot of new coaches come on board, I could see where that could be an administrative aggravation. But my thing would be I would love to see the divisions line back up where you've got the old, AFC Central with the Steelers and the Browns and all those in there, and having the AFC, the NFC East with the Cowboys and
Yep.
the Redskins, and the NFC Central with the old creamsicle Bucks and the Bears.
Oh, not the creamsicle ones. Wow.
Oh yeah. But that could be a lot of. I can also see that could be anyway. We got like 12 more questions to go because y'all were chatty Cathy's on your questions. So we better keep moving.
All right, let's keep this thing moving. So, my 3 questions that I have for both of them was the first one was, what is the best way to prepare for a team that you will face? Is it running sims or focusing on the game tapes and logs? So, let's start with Justin's answers first.
His answers are probably all 3 if you have the time. Of course, not many of us have the time. If we're still doing this when I retire, you're in for a world of hurt.
All right, let's see. What was Thomas's answer on that one?
He said, my preparation with my opponents has evolved dramatically. I used to just copy the best coaches. I would look at their logs and hope. It created moderate success until I played them. I rarely could beat William or Rich because their plans were changing constantly changing like Justin does now. I learned I had to accept that one plan does not beat all teams. You have to have a unique plan each week for that opponent. I sim games and test plays, not all of the plays, but I test a large core group each week when time allows. I never look at game tapes. I do use log programs to show me, I assume he means logger and win log stats, to show me what opponents are doing. These skills are obtained a very long time ago from comments Rich made on an old forum where he outlined what he did. Yeah, I remember that. And one thing I'm definitely hearing from both their answers, I believe they both do a good amount of simming and testing of plays, as Thomas specifically mentioned. And I think Justin does his fair share of that as well. But I think what's important is not only do we test plays and sim games, but what we do with that data and how we do it and how we read that data will really make a difference in how we're putting together game plans. And because there's a whole issue of how you scout the other team too. That's something to think about.
Okay. Mitch, what's your take on this?
I really don't have a whole lot extra to add. I kind of fall in with what they're, trying to do, and I'm still working and tweaking my process with that. And so, no, nothing much more to add there, Mark.
All right. So the second question I had for them was, how do you think the overall product in the league has progressed through the seasons? What are your positives and negatives? So let's start with Justin on this one again.
All right. Justin says the league is much more competitive now than it was 30 or 40 seasons ago. Said Rich being retired from coaching has made it so, not only because he's not in direct competition, but also because he's been open and sharing tips for success and kept us moving forward. Rich has really developed the league into what it is, and I give him a ton of credit. I really like the logs back in the day because they're a quick 10-minute read, but the gameplay videos have undeniably been a huge step forward and encourage better play calling too. I don't know for a fact, but I think my timeout calling was pretty horrific until the last few seasons. The radio show has been huge for the league interest, and I enjoy hearing ideas and opinions from your perspective.
Well, thank you.
I have always felt the PNFL was actually ahead of the NFL in trends that make logical sense, but the NFL has to overcome some sort of stigma. I read an article the other day about the disappearance of the workhorse running back over the past 20 NFL seasons, but the PNFL was rotating running backs before it became commonplace in the real world. We are all able to go for it on fourth down without worrying about job security and always have been. That's only just now becoming a thing in the NFL with all the analytics backing up decisions. Overall, I see a whole lot of positives over the years. Now, negatives. I think one thing that a lot of teams lack, and a lot of teams lack an identity. I mean, if you really look at who the Jets or the Cardinals are, what do you see? We are vanilla teams with interchangeable parts. Of course, my team feels like it has an identity to me, but what is it? It's not perceivable to others. The Jets are the same team they have been for the last decade. The names change, but who they are stays the same. Every year, they'll have one of the league's top passers and a host of backs and receivers that put up solid but unspectacular numbers. That's what is efficient. That's what does well in the league right now. That's what we're striving for in order to be the best. But I wonder if it's too efficient, too boring. I prefer for teams to have an identity, like what Sean did with the Giants this year with Barkley in the running game. We knew who they were and what they were about. It truly felt like an accomplishment to slow them down in the wild card game. I understand who James's Lions are. They're the up and coming. Maybe a couple of teams are recognizable for what they do or what they don't have on their roster, but for the most part, we're all the same. I don't want to have to look at Mitch's ratings to know who the top D lines are in the league are. I should be able to tell from the product on the field and the stats. I should just know. Of course, in the end, I guess the parity has been good overall, too, though. So that's Justin's response.
All
Yeah,
right.
Thomas said the overall product in the PNFL is consistent with what I recall 30 seasons ago. There were top coaches then, and there were bad coaches then. I was middle of the road for a long time. I think the PNFL greats of 40 seasons ago would still be great today.
All right. So, what are your guys' take on those answers? Let's start.
Well, I find it interesting what
We haven't heard
Jeff
from
said.
Thomas yet, Mark. We have not heard from Thomas yet.
Oh, I
I
thought
just read it.
he just read it.
I just
Oh, I
read it.
thought that was your comment.
No, that was
sorry.
Thomas's comment.
That was your comment. Okay.
Yep.
I think it was interesting what Justin said about identity. And part of that might be because our ratings are so close to being similar across the board at each position that maybe that's part of why we lack some identity, even though we're putting the names of, the real life NFL rookies on these rookies as they're created. And, that of course raises the whole debate about whether or not The problem, and this is what's been brought up with trying to change those ratings too much, is the degree to which it might skew the results of the games. I think, Steve has noted the way some of those so-called blue chip players were created in the XFBS college league that he ran, and they got accumulated on a handful of teams, led to 96-0 type scores. So we don't want that either.
Well, it was a college format, and that's what happens in college when really good teams play under, funded other teams, right? I think the PNFL. I don't think we would need to have. We don't need to go that far, but I've said on the forum several times and whatnot. I mean, just a slow trickle down over the next 10 seasons. If we reduce the average of each position rating just by 1% each year, each draft, in 10 seasons, our new minimum rating would be 85% of max. I think that, which is still higher than what our minimum max scale is. And so I think that would create a lot of diversity, but also it'd still keep things tight enough to where you wouldn't have, Alabama versus Savannah State situation every week.
You mean like the college football situation where one of the teams clearly did not belong there because they'd gone 12-0 playing a bunch of cupcake opponents? You mean like that kind of situation?
Mm-hmm.
That game wasn't 96-0, but it wasn't too far from it.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. So we'll move on to the third one. I think we kind of discussed both guys' answer on this one. So the last question that I had for them, what is your history in the game as far as playing FB Pro? How long have you played? What's the best thing in being in a sim league? So we're going to start this one with Thomas's answer.
He said, I have never played in another league. I discovered this game when Football Pro 99 came out.
Ooh.
Bought it, and it was terrible.
Ooh, he picked
Everyone
that one.
was saying 98 was the best value, so I bought it. I played by myself and then with 5 other buddies in our own league. I then quit and bumped into the PNFL one day and thought, why not give this a try? The best part of the league is the competition. My goal is to win a Super Bowl, and I could quit. Once I did that, I wanted to do it again. Winning is addictive. Yeah, you never get sick of winning. No such thing as winning too much.
Yep. So, and what was Justin's answer?
Well, Justin, his take is, from an early age, my mom and dad had computers with some sort of computer games on them. Meltdown and One-on-One, Dr. J versus Larry Bird were memorable. When I was maybe 10 years old, I was just really getting interested in football. I remember staying the nights at a friend's house whose dad had a text-based football sim game. I remember playing it pretty much all night long. I loved to figure out for sure what game that was. One of our games featured, I think, a 106-yard interception return for a TD, which stuck in my mind, but then became much more memorable when I learned from a football card that just the prior NFL season record had been set by Vincey Glenn at 103 yards. As a kid who liked baseball and football cards, I was very much into stats, and so I was interested in a game that had good graphics but also based on stats. And so when we got a new PC in about 1993, and I was a kid with a job and some money to spend, I remember looking for some good sports games. For baseball, I mail ordered Tony La Russa 2 after a write-up in Baseball Weekly. And for football, I am quite sure that I randomly encountered the original Football Pro on the shelf at a local department store that just happened to have PC game section. So I guess that was about 30 years ago. Now, I loved the game right out of the gate. I remember playing head-to-head in person, each of us covering up our own half of the keyboards, of
Yep,
course.
I remember that.
Loved making plays and then would design plays to use in our games, but also got into creating my own sim league. These were the days of the WLAF, and I remember making my own truly worldwide league just for fun. Then I upgraded to FB Pro 95 when that came out. That was the one with Barry Sanders on the cover that added the 2-point conversions and kickoffs from the 30. When I went off to college, I remember trying to get two Gravis game pads working with a new PC to be able to play in-person games, but couldn't figure it out. And I lost interest in the game for a few years. This was the era that PlayStation, Nintendo 64 had some good for the era arcade football games, which were of course easier to play head to head. But one year over Christmas break, I dusted off the old FP Pro 95 and had an epiphany. The internet had really changed this game. There were online leagues everywhere, and I was late to the party. The problem was leagues were winding down. It wasn't easy to find the good ones. I joined the Internet Football Federation for a few seasons. I think it folded in 2002. Joined the Canadian Bacon Football League, which maybe folded in 2003. That's where Jerry and I first crossed paths. He joined the PNFL a couple of seasons before me. There was some difference of opinion about 95 versus 96 versus 98. I think I did a year or two in the virtual football league and came to the PNFL for the 2005 season after I finally upgraded to 98. In my early days in the league, I remember watching games on Net Scoreboard. That was awesome. Sunday having three windows tracking fantasy league matchups and a fourth on Net Scoreboard. I also played in some secondary leagues, the AFL, the UFFL, the ONAFL, and the SSFL, and I took off 7 seasons between 2013 to 2019 after winning my second PNFL title in the 2012 season. I've won more titles in other leagues in the PNFL. My goal is to catch up in this league. The best thing about being in a sim league is that you can get your football fix and do things at your own speed or on your own schedule. My schedule is pretty much all over the place, and I couldn't see playing head to head at a certain time each week, for instance. I looked at head to head, but sim league was right for me. I have also found that I actually prefer FB Pro to watching football. I like the game, but I prefer to have control like I would in a game of chess. The NFL has become more of a product than I care for. I don't do fantasy leagues anymore, and I've learned over time I don't like rooting for real life players and coaches who I really know nothing about and turn out to be less than stellar humans. I really have no desire to go to a college or pro game now. I'll still go to an occasional high school game just for fun, though. And that's Justin's answer, everybody.
Yeah, that was quite an answer, and I think a lot of what he said there mirrors the experience of a lot of us. We've been
Yeah.
in and out of leagues and played in a number of leagues. I first joined them in like 1994 and was involved in them for most of a decade, and then retired from them, and then in 2011 joined the PNFL and have been in it since. So that's another 12 years, and we may still be in this league and possibly even doing this show 10 years from now, for all we know.
Yeah. So
Well, I'll tell you, my read Justin's answer. I mean, it very much mirrors my experience. I won't go through all of it there, but I mean, I remember back in '92 or '93, I was in high school, and I remember going to Sears with my grandmother. We were at Sears for, I don't even know why we were there, but I remember they had a little section where they had some PC games, and I saw this thing. It said Football Pro or the Dynamics Football Pro, and I'm like, and I'm reading the back of the box. It's similar to Justin. I had really, as a kid, really had gotten into baseball sims like Earl Weaver Baseball and all of that, and would go and get the Baseball Weekly stats and type them into the game so we could simulate it out. So when I found that Dynamics Football Pro and reading the back, and one thing that caught my attention was it actually had 11 players on each side of the ball, which was kind of cool back then. But yeah, it talked about trades and free agency and all this. Like, oh my gosh, this is
And
like
the
Earl Weaver
draft,
Baseball, but football, And so anyway, they kind of just went from there. So I could relate.
Now, before we go to the other, go over to um, Thomas's answer. I remember I'm carbon dating.
Yeah, Thomas says earlier.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. I'm gonna carbon date myself here. So, I remember in '93, I was at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and I remember picking the game up from the PX on base, and had Barry Sanders on. It was a dynamics game, and I just remember looking at it, and I had one of my buddies was down the hall, and we used to play the game. At first, we started out. He was a Dallas Cowboys fan. I was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and I just remember we would just sit in the room on a Saturday, and we would go through a whole season, and we'd always end up in the championship. We just took the games. Initially, that was the plays that was initially in the game, but then you had America Online at the time, so we were able to dial in, and you could download the plays in some of the chat rooms. You can go ahead and pull those in and then add those into the game. And then we went with some of those, and we'd run our own plays. And I think I actually still have the league file saved from that league. And that's all we would do on a Saturday and a Sunday. That's what we would do. In the evening, we'd probably go out, hang out for a little bit, but I'd always come back and want to play that game. And once I got out of the service, I just kept going. Every year, just kept getting the newer version, just kept just marching all the way through until 99 came out, and that just pretty much killed it. So
that game was an abortion.
Yeah, pretty much. So
Do you realize, Mark, in 1993 when you started playing this game, and around the time I started playing this game, I was just down the road from you in Knoxville, Tennessee at that time.
Oh wow.
Not too far from. I'm assuming Mitch was in the Atlanta area. He wasn't far either.
Yeah.
The three of us.
I would have been about 3 hours south of Atlanta back then, but
Okay.
Yes, the three of us within like 7 hours of each other.
Yeah,
Think
all
about
within
that.
7 hours. Yep. And like I said, I was down the road at Fort Campbell. I remember when we weren't out training or right on missions. I remember my buddy Mike. We would sit there and, okay, what are we gonna do? Go get some pizza, get some beer, and we're playing football. And that's all we did the whole weekend. Just play that. And when we played each other, it was always Pittsburgh and Dallas, and we were talking trash the whole time. I mean, good friends. When we were on the field, that was it. Just going back and forth. So,
It was fun.
oh yeah, and there was fourth down. Yeah, there was no punting. We were going for it on fourth down. So, just a big rivalry. So we've gone through those three questions. From
One question mark.
and the last question is from our Pulitzer Prize.
This is the question that everybody's been waiting for. You've made such a big deal of it.
Yes, our
Mark.
Pulitzer
Everybody's
Prize
waiting for this
winning journalist that's so good he only had to ask one question, and that is from Mitch, Coach Holtz, Mel Kiper. Grawl. So his question that he has is, after so many years in the league and having so much success, what keeps you coming back for more? So
And that's a great question right there.
Yes.
All right.
So we are going to start with Thomas's answer first.
Yeah, Thomas said, I enjoy the competition, as I said, but it is becoming harder for me. My real life has changed quite a bit in recent years. I almost resigned after the 2040 season. I decided to take some time off for 2041 and do less and focus on my real life. You guys have commented on my dedication to 2042, and that is somewhat true. Somewhat true, he says. I hated losing last year, and my best foot was not forward. I was so much more dedicated in 2042. The truth is, the seasons ahead may look more like 2041. I do not want to retire, but my real life is taking more of my attention. I will do my best on Sunday and see what the future holds.
Okay. Hey, sometimes you have things on the outside that affects things on the inside. So, um,
Right.
do you have before we read Justin's answer? Do you guys have any comments on Thomas's answer?
I'll just say this. If got to be a part-time coach, wins the division, wins 11 games, and gets deep into the playoffs, then I think he can afford to take a little extra time with his personal endeavors because he still wins big regardless.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think he makes a good point there, and the time that we spend doing this comes at an opportunity cost to do other things. And I know when we were talking about Steve's team being in the Super Bowl hangover, he had mentioned that there were weeks where he didn't spend as much time as he would like to because he had to spend time doing things in other areas that he's working on. So that's always, and I found that too. Sometimes I look at a week and say, okay, who am I playing this week? And how many hours do I have to spend to be able to put together a game plan that's going to beat that team? And you make questions. You budget your time. Do you think about how you can work smarter rather than harder in putting together game plans? So this is something we do as a hobby. We're not doing this as a living. None of us get paid to do this. So you balance it against the other things that you do from week to week and day to day that you need to do. So Thomas raised some very good points here, and I'm sure those are questions and issues we've all looked at and faced in deciding how much time we can and want to invest in our involvement in this hobby.
Yeah. I agree with it as well. Uh, doing the show, and you guys are doing your part in helping out, and then I feel like I kind of get caught up with the day in the life, and especially in the past couple of weeks, past several weeks, I should say, it definitely takes a lot of time and doing a lot of different things related to getting the putting the time in to try to put a good product out there. And definitely, you have to kind of find that balance. But there's times where life happens. It's a nice hobby to have. It's a good hobby to have, in my opinion. But you got to be able to find that way, that balance. So it's
And then you even face decisions on what time do you spend doing what. I could sit there and say, well, okay, the off season is here, and I'm going to put so much time in doing this, and I might like designing players, or some team owners like making trades, but then you have to think, well, what are the things that I can do that will increase my chance of winning games this coming season? What I like to do may not always be the things that I should do if I want to win more of. And ultimately at the end of the day, we all do want to win more often, and you're going to see that in Justin's answer.
yeah. So all right. Any other comments you have on this one, Mitch, before we go to Justin's
No,
answer?
I'll just read Justin's response.
Okay, let's go.
All right. So, what keeps him coming back? This, the Super Bowl, seeing it all come together, but knowing that my team could still fall miles short. And now I hear our scouting combine just opened up. I'm falling behind. Better get to work.
Yeah,
Oh,
so winning Super Bowls makes you want to get back there and do it again, as Thomas noted, that winning is addictive. But another thing that will make you want to get back there is getting there once and losing, because you didn't finish the deal. You got to get back there and win the thing.
yep. Got to close the deal. Got to close the deal. So, anything else you guys have on this segment before we move on to the final part? Any final
Very,
words or
very
anything?
good answers overall, and a lot of interesting issues raised. And I think, maybe in some ways it was just as good as like interviewing them in person. They had time to like think about their answers and write out answers. And it's I'm glad we did this. It was a really good thing.
Yep.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, guys, for answering the questions.
Yep.
Yeah,
Definitely.
we definitely do appreciate it,
Yep. So,
as I'm sure all the listeners do too.
oh yeah, oh yeah. So, we are gonna pivot over to the final segment, which you guys already know, the upcoming games. As we head into our lead pipe lock, going to the final game of the postseason. At this point, Mitch is 1-1. Dean is 1-1, and I am 1-1 on our lead pipe locks this season, so or the postseason, I should say. As you guys will see on the screen. So as we come to wrap this up, we all know who the final two teams are. Um, Rich's Sporting Books right now as a spread of 2.5 points, giving a slight nod over to the Jets. So we're going to start this off. Since he has given a slight edge to the AFC, I think we're going to have the NFC coach, Dean, come up with his prediction first and his final lead pipe lock of the season. So, Dean, who are you taking this week?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a fairly close game. I think Rich is much closer with his point spread in this game than the two games last week, and I think Justin is going to put in the full effort and really wants to win this, and I think he's going to do everything that he is capable of doing to win this. That being said, I think Thomas is going to do the same thing as well, and I think when assessing the two, I give a small edge to Thomas, and I think that the teams will match up pretty well. The last time they played, I don't remember the exact score, but the Jets, I believe, won by like a couple touchdowns or so. It's going to be closer this time. I'm expecting the Jets to win by about 3 or 4 points. So I would say if you're betting and, that's what you want to bet on. And, of course, just one game this week. So for all three of us, it is the lead pipe lock. Put your money on the Jets winning by at least a field goal.
All right. Mitch, what do you have?
Well, as I've said, I have recently played both of these teams. Heartbreaking losses. Both teams were very tough to prepare for, and are always tough. So I have respect for both coaches and how they play the game. I think this game could go either way. I'll go with the team that is shows as the quote unquote home team for the game. I'll go with the Jets, but it can go either way. So that's what I'm taking. I'll take New York.
All right. So, for me, I think from looking at both teams, seeing how well they played all season, as I said before, I definitely think that the Jets are on a mission. As we saw in the second segment, how he was talking about he kind of throttled back last season, and now he's kicking it back in and say, hey, guys, I haven't gone anywhere. I am back. I do believe it's going to be a very close game. I get it, maybe a spread of probably 3 points that will be going towards the Jets, and I am predicting the Jets to win and take the championship this season. So as we wrap up the 2042 season. So as we come to wrap this up, any final thoughts? We had, let's start with Dean. Anything you have to say on this one?
Yeah, we have two teams playing in the Super Bowl this season, and we have 16 other teams that are working on figuring out how they might have a chance of getting into that game next season.
Okay. Mitch, anything that you have before you take us home?
Yes, there will be a special edition of PNFL News this week for the Super Bowl. The editor took a couple of weeks off, but we'll have that back out there this week. And other than that, let's get it.